I've always believed that thin threads of circumstance bring people into our lives, and my introduction to Darren Hardy is a classic example. Darren is a best-selling author, speaker, consultant, former editor of Success Magazine, entrepreneur, and one of the most brilliant men I've ever followed. I was living in Broomfield, Colorado in the spring of 2012 when a member at the gym where I was working gave me a CD called Making the Shift. The author was Darren Hardy, and the content he shared was on the mental shift needed to go from being an employee to being an entrepreneur. The information on the CD was excellent. However, the member was using it specifically to recruit for a business he was involved in. While I had no interest in his company, I was so grateful for the connection to Darren because of the lessons I've learned from him over the past 11 years have been life changing. You weren't born to be good. You are here to be great. You were called here for a reason, to fulfill a particular purpose, a mission, to contribute something unique, something that wouldn't have existed without you. It's your hero's journey. And that is the embodiment of everything Darren and his A team stands for. Coach Kelly here, and I make these videos because my superpower is to encourage and serve through the vehicles of fitness and business. And with that background, the following are the top 10 lessons I've learned from the man who's become one of my most influential mentors. So from Darren's book, The Compound Effect, number one, long-term perspective and consistency. The compound effect is a powerful positive or negative force in your life, and many people fail to realize it. So what happens when you double a penny every day for 31 days? You start with 1 penny on day one, and then 2 pennies on day two, and then 4 and 8 and 16 and 32 and 64 and 128 and 256 and so on. Now, there's not much to be excited about after 9 days and a total of $2.56. And yet, when you jump ahead to day 30, you have $5,368,709.12. On day 31, you have $10,737,418.24. Now, here's the catch. The math never changes from day one to day 31. It's just simple duplication. The power is in the consistency. Miss any one day and you don't get anywhere near the same totals. Simple concept has taught me to have a long-term perspective while maintaining absolute consistency in the present moment. Then you're tripped up in two ways. So with negative habits, you don't see the damage being done in the moment. And yet, like the penny example above, a harmful habit compounded over time can destroy your health, relationships, career, and ultimately your life. For this reason, you have to remain vigilant and aware of every area of your life. They work the same way even when building positive and new habits. People don't see the benefits in the short run because the positive effects are too small to be noticed. Exercise, nutrition, and weight loss are great examples of people trying repeatedly to change only to give up too soon because of the lack of apparent results. The key is to be patient in the short run and to trust the process until the power of the compound effect kicks in. Then the positive results will be so compelling that there's no way you'll stop. Number two, taking 100% responsibility. Now, this is a big one. And while I have to give credit to Darren's mentor, the great Jim Rohn, for first sharing this concept with me, Darren has hammered this principle deep into my consciousness in recent years. It's really straightforward. Accept 100% responsibility for every area of your life. This means the good and the bad. You are where you are in life because of the choices and decisions that you've made. If you don't like where you are in any area of your life, make different choices. It is that simple. Now, you might say it's not your fault that you're dealing with a specific negative situation, and that may be true. Yet you always have a choice in how you respond to any situation. When you place blame on outside circumstances, you give away your power to create change for the positive in your life. So regardless of what happens to you, choose to respond positively. Be solution-oriented rather than problem-oriented, and your life will be much better as a result. Number three, associations. Your associations in life will make or break you, so choose wisely. It's been said that you're the combined average of the top 5 to 10 people you spend the most time with. This principle is nothing new, as you've heard it all your life, most likely starting with your mother. The challenge is it's not easy. So I encourage you to take a serious inventory of your life, including your faith, family, and friends, finances, and fitness. Now look at the people that you spend time with and consider how they're doing in these areas. You may have some hard choices to make depending on what you find. Life is too short to allow negative people to drag you down. And remember, there's no such thing as treading water. You're either growing for the positive or you're slipping backwards for the negative. And for added emphasis, it's not just the people that you have to be careful with. News in any format, social media, television, movies, and music carry a positive or negative message. You seriously have to guard your heart and your mind daily because in our overly tech stimulated world, you're being bombarded day and night. To paraphrase Darren, you must be hyper vigilant in feeding your mind with a positive and shielding your mind from the negative because trust me, the negative will be a path to your door. Number 4, momentum. Momentum is a tremendous force that properly harnessed can propel you to success regardless of your pursuit. According to Darren, a train traveling 55 miles an hour on a railroad track can crash through a 5-foot thick steel reinforced concrete wall without stopping. It will essentially vaporize it. In that starting from a stationary position, the same train won't be able to go through an inch thick block in front of the driving wheel. The trick is to get momentum working for you so that like the train above, you become unstoppable. The bigger secret I've learned from there regarding momentum is that building it takes time and patience. A great example is Apple's introduction of the iPod. For the record, Apple was the 8th company to introduce an MP3 player, 4 years behind the original from South Korea's Seihan information system. So in 2000, Apple's revenue was 30%. In 2001, when they launched the iPod, their revenue growth dropped to minus 33%. In 2002, it improved to only minus 2%. In 2003, it improved to 18%. In 2004, it hit 33%. And from there, Apple skyrocketed to control over 70% of the MP3 player market. And today, according to Google, Apple as a brand is worth more than $100 billion. This story has always been such an encouragement to me because remember, the iPod entered the MP3 race 4 years behind the leaders with a technically inferior product. Yet Apple caught momentum due to Steve Jobs' dogged, persistent, brilliant marketing mind and rode that wave to market dominance. Number 5, Thanksgiving Journal. Of all the lessons I learned from Darren over the years, this is my favorite, and it's the power of gratitude. His favorite holiday is Thanksgiving, where he emphasizes showing love and affection for the special people in his life more than any other time of the year. So one year in particular, Darren gave his wife, Georgia, an extraordinary gift, a Thanksgiving journal. For the entire previous year, Darren journaled one positive thing daily regarding his wife. It could be anything from how she styled her hair to the meal she prepared for dinner or how she cared for their dogs. This is a classic case of manifesting what you give focus and energy to. Darren will say that 1 year of constantly looking for the good in his wife positively impacted their relationship. The benefit he discovered was that by proactively focusing on the positive in Georgia, he found himself compelled to show up differently and ultimately to love her all the more. She loved the journal, expressing that it was the best gift he had ever given her, and that included the BMW she had received from her birthday earlier that year. From Darren's book, The Entrepreneurial Roller Coaster, number 6, Habituating to Fear. One of my favorite stories is from Darren's early days of playing baseball and learning to bat from his dad. His challenge was staying in the batter's box due to a fear of being hit by the ball. The further challenge was that Darren's dad was a hardcore man's man football coach who could have doubled for Gunnery Sergeant Hartman from the movie Full Metal Jacket. So for Darren to be afraid of being hit by the ball was completely unacceptable. The solution to conquering his fear was to remove the need for fear in the first place. So Darren's dad started their batting practice with wiffle balls to help him learn to stay in the batter's box. Initially, Mr. Hardy threw right at Darren, repeatedly teaching him not to flinch at the sight of the approaching ball. Now, being hit by a wiffle ball was painless, yet the drill's repetition led him to stay rock solid versus jumping out of the way. Gradually, Mr. Hardy started throwing over the plate so Darren could actually swing at the ball. Occasionally, he would still beam Darren to remind him that being hit was okay. So once he conquered the wiffle balls, they moved on to tennis balls, repeating the same process. Now, being hit by a tennis ball did sting a little. However, with his strength and resolve, they moved on to actual baseballs. Now, Mr. Hardy would not intentionally hit Darren with a baseball yet. The potential for being accidentally hit was still a little intimidating. So to sweeten the deal, the agreement was that if he was hit 3 times, he earned a trip to get pizza. Now, Darren loved pizza when he was a kid. And so while the baseballs did hurt quite a bit, he quickly learned that a few moments of pain were well worth the payoff of a large pepperoni and sausage. Ultimately, Darren's weakness became a tremendous strength as he gained an uncanny ability to get on base because he learned to conquer his fear. And you can do the same thing with whatever fear is holding you back. Break it down to the most minor possible step and then take that step. If appropriate, build a reward system like Darren's trip to the local pizza parlor. One small step at a time with the right mindset will allow you to conquer any fear you may have. Number 7, failing your way to success. Michael Jordan ranks in the all-time top 10 for the most missed shots, yet he is arguably considered the greatest player in the history of the NBA. Thomas J. Watson of IBM had a philosophy of embracing failure. He believed that ultimate success was found on the far side of failure. And Jeff Bezos of Amazon.com has burned hundreds of millions of dollars in building the most successful company on the planet. Amazon has created a culture of failure that drives its universe-denting success. Darren learned this valuable lesson early in his days of selling real estate. In a down market where most of the veterans in the office just waited for the phone to ring, Darren forced success by stacking up failures. He would go door to door approaching homes listed as for sale by owner and then spent hours calling on expired listings in the evenings. He went from being the rookie to the top agent in his office by pushing the pendulum so far to the side of failure that it catapulted him to the extreme opposite side of success. It was a numbers game. Like I learned from my first sales manager. You have 52 cards with 12 face cards and a deck of cards. With a deck shuffled and face down, drawing one card at a time, it is impossible not to draw a face card eventually. You know they're in there. You just have to trust the process and run the numbers until they prove you right. When applied to life, the challenge is simply having the intestinal fortitude to overcome the struggles needed to succeed. From Darren's program, Insane Productivity, number 8, digital addiction. The single biggest threat to our productivity in today's world is distractions. Our attention is constantly being pulled in many different directions between our phones, tablets, computers, social media, and seemingly endless apps. And the problem is, for the most part, we've done it to ourselves and we love it. I say we love it because, according to healthline.com, for many people, social interaction simulates a dopamine release. Because so many people use their phones as social interaction tools, they become accustomed to constantly checking them for that dopamine release when they connect with others on social media or some other app. So digital addiction is a real thing, and it can be challenging to break. The challenge with phones has become so pervasive that to see someone in public alone without their face buried in their phone is almost an anomaly. In the gym environment where I earn part of my living, it is rare to see someone training without their phone. The challenge is that more and more people have equipment between sets with their face buried in their phone, texting, emailing, and generally surfing the web. The bottom line is it's becoming a nuisance. And for all the warnings about not using your phone while driving, you still see people daily with one hand on the wheel and then their phone in the other. It's time to stop the insanity. Thankfully, Darren made me aware of my challenge and the possibility of change that comes with awareness. So my struggle is not so much with social media or staying connected with the news. My kryptonite is email and text messages. They're the monsters that I'm still trying to train. The problem is that they're the primary tools I use to communicate with my clients. And being a people person who loves to serve, I feel compelled to constantly check my phone for the sake of running my business. The solution was simple enough. And now I only check for messages at specific times of the day. This keeps me in control and has reduced my stress levels substantially. My favorite strategy from Darren, especially concerning not using your phone while driving, is to leave it out of reach in the back seat, or if needed, in your trunk, Now, if the thought of not having your phone handy in your car gives you the shakes, you may have a problem. And it's not just confined to your vehicle. Nomophobia, an abbreviation of no mobile phone phobia, is also called cell phone addiction. Symptoms include experiencing anxiety or panic over losing your phone and obsessively checking for missed calls, emails, and text. Sound familiar? In Darren's Insane Productivity course, he provides a digital addiction assessment to determine your actual level of digital struggle. Once you take the test, your roadmap for change will be spelled out, and with one step at a time, you can take back your life. Number 9, no multitasking required. So, how many of you know someone who prides themselves on being good at multitasking? You do understand there's no such thing as multitasking, right? It is impossible to run two cognitive processes in your brain simultaneously. What you're doing is switching, and switching makes you dumber than if you were smoking dope. When you're smoking dope, seriously, your IQ drops by about 5 points. When you're switching between two different and yet like cognitive tasks, it drops by about 10. Look, you can walk on a treadmill, chew gum, and watch a video on your phone simultaneously and do great because you're using different parts of your brain. But when you're driving with your phone, you're either driving or looking at your phone. You can't do both simultaneously. So driving while using your phone is incredibly dangerous. Add a cup of coffee to the mix and you're a wreck waiting to happen. Don't believe me? Try this. Count from 1 to 10 as fast as you can. Now name the letters of the alphabet from A to J as fast as you can. No sweat, right? Now try 1A, 2B, 3C, all the way to 10J as fast as possible and see how you do. I bet you slow down quite a bit. And why? Because you're running two different cognitive tasks, switching back and forth between the numbers and the letters, which comes close to locking up your brain. This was hard for me to accept, however. I promise you will get far more done doing one thing at a time. And remember, it's not a matter of getting it all done anyway. You'll never get it all done. Your inbox will never be empty. Your to-do list will never end. The key to high productivity is to get the right things done. Focus on priority management, not time management. You'll never control time, but you can maximize it by focusing on your highest producing activities. Number 10, design your life, then your career or your business. Many people get this backwards. They choose a job without carefully considering the life that career path will give them. So, how do you define success? How do you want to live your life when you're not working? Do you want a long commute or a short one, or none? Do you want to travel? Do you want to have your nights and weekends free? These questions could go on and on and on, and they should. Some people spend far more time planning their vacations than planning for their life. The key is design the life you want to live in the most vivid detail, and then select the career path that supports your dreams. Or if you have an entrepreneurial spirit, build a business to support the life of your dreams. This concept is not complicated. And yet again, most people get it backwards. These are some of the same people who live for the weekend, and life is too short to live for only 2 days out of 7. In closing, Jim Rohn was Darren's most significant mentor outside of his dad. I discovered Mr. Rohn back in the 90s, and I've studied his teachings over the years. Jim was brilliant and considered America's foremost business philosopher. He touched the hearts of people around the world and certainly has impacted mine, including these 2 dominant principles that are pretty much burned in my mind. Number 1, leave the world better than you find it. I promise you, it is impossible for me to go to Walmart or Costco without picking up random pieces of merchandise from the floor and placing them back on the shelf. It's as if Jim is looking down on me from heaven, watching me. Number 2, if a book, song, movie, or experience touches your heart and life, you must share it with others. And so in the spirit of Jim, I've shared Darren's impact on my life. Best of luck in your journey. Now, as a bonus, I want to share how I had the unique opportunity to meet Darren in person. Ultimately, my living in Colorado was short, and I moved back to Dallas in August of 2012. In the spring of 2016, I received an email from Tom Ziglar, son of the great Zig Ziglar. Now, as a longtime follower of Zig, I was on their email list, so this wasn't a personal message from Tom. However, it promoted an upcoming special event that was intriguing. Best-selling author, speaker, and motivational guru Brian Tracy was planning to hold a 3-day success training weekend in May, and it was practically going to be in my backyard. I live in North Dallas, and then the event was just literally minutes from my home. So I quickly scanned through the details, especially looking for the price, when I came across one particular point that caught my attention. Darren Hardy, who I'd been following for about 4 years at that point, was named one of the featured keynote speakers. After searching, I finally found the cost of the event. The base package was $1,000 with a VIP upgrade for an extra $497, giving you access to the guest speakers during a private banquet style lunch on Friday and Saturday. In all fairness, I think a ton of Brian Tracy, who is a brilliant man. I purchased my first of several Brian Tracy books back in the 90s. However, there's no way I would have spent $14.97 to see him, but to see Darren Hardy live is a done deal. So I immediately clicked on the link provided in the email to register, and then the countdown began. From that day on April 6th to the actual event, May 13th to the 15th, that may have been one of the longest waits of my life, but well worth it. The lineup of speakers on Friday was solid, and the opportunity to meet Brian Tracy during the VIP lunch was very special. However, my sights were still set on Saturday with Darren. He was scheduled to speak mid-morning, so I didn't have to wait too long, and yet time just seemed to drag on and on from speaker to speaker I'd never really heard of for the most part. And then finally, after a warm introduction from the host and a short video featured on 2 massive screens, Darren emerged from behind the curtains and walked out on stage. The whole experience was surreal, and he seemed just so much larger than life. It was very much like the chance to meet with a celebrity, or maybe that you've seen hundreds of times on TV or in the movies. Between listening to Darren on audio and watching his videos on YouTube, I'd heard his voice hundreds of times. I literally teared up a little. So when he finally spoke, it was like listening to a friend because of the overwhelming familiarity. His topic was on productivity, and the content was terrific. Darren was as polished as I expected, and clearly the standout speaker for the entire weekend. I took pages of notes, and as he started wrapping up, my mind began racing, anticipating hopefully meeting him at the upcoming VIP lunch. With his talk complete, he made an offer good for the weekend to enroll in his world-class online productivity training program called Insane Productivity. Now, I had intended to invest only the price of attending the event. However, Darren made a unique and appealing offer for the attendees, and so, well, with a little deliberation, I jumped at the opportunity to further my education from the man who had become one of my most significant mentors. So a few of the other speakers followed Darren, and then it was off to the VIP lunch. So when I walked into the room, there were already quite a few people in a long line waiting to have their picture with Darren. So I was hungry, but food was not my priority. So after leaving my journal at one of the place settings, I jumped in line. And after what seemed like forever, it was finally my turn. As I walked up with my hand extended to introduce myself, Darren graciously shook my hand, and we took our places for the photo. It was short and sweet due to the many people still waiting in line. However, it was very special to me. I thanked Darren for being there and then went to the buffet line to get some food. Afterwards, I was hoping to have the opportunity to do some Q&A with Darren before the afternoon session, and fortunately, that was the case. So once he wrapped up with the photos, he positioned himself sort of centrally at the front of the room, allowing us to ask questions. I was one of the few lucky ones who was called on, adding to an already fantastic experience. Given the number of people, spending one-on-one time with Darren was impractical, although I still thought my VIP upgrade was well worth it, and I will treasure the memory of meeting him forever.